Hi again then guys, and so we are returning to the theme of top speed builds again. We're not coming back to do top speed builds as regularly as I originally did on the channel, but this is just another top speed build for those who may need it, which is just a pretty good tune to have for those who are fans of the car. Now I've already done a couple of different speed builds for the R34 Skyline, but they were for the premium model rather than the non-premium. So what we've done with this build is we've gone for the highest PP non-premium R34, which is the M-Spec NER, and as far as performance and spec, it's actually not far off, not that much different to the premium. Now I've gone for racing softs, but obviously that depends on the driver and the situation. As far as suspension, I've got the ride height on 100, front and rear. You can adjust that if you want to. You could take it a bit higher at the front and lower at the back to improve acceleration. You could lower it overall or even raise it. It's up to you. As far as springs, I've rounded them off to 775 and 6. The dampers to 4. Anti-roll I've left on 3. We've got no camber and no toe because this car has more than enough grip anyway. We'll come back to the gearbox in just a second, of course. As far as the diff, I've got the lowest initial torque, highest acceleration, and lowest braking sensitivity. I've gone for a torque split of 20/80, but you may want to adjust that to your personal preference. You want all of your power upgrades, of course, plus, as always, an oil change, and I would recommend the mid-range turbo, especially with the gear setup that I'm using on this car. I've fitted NOS, but again, that depends on the driver. Obviously, you want the full weight loss package and your downforce set as low as possible, or of course you could even remove the rear wing completely. Finally, for the gearbox, I've gone for the highest possible auto setting, and then for the individual gears, if I remember correctly, I did a flip on this one. I believe it was a 4.5 gearbox flip. So for those who are unfamiliar with that, what you want to do is take your auto setting all the way up to 273, then come down to your final drive, and as I said, if I remember correctly, put your final drive to 4.5 on this particular model, then come back to your auto setting, click it down and back up to 273, then you'll be able to hit these individual gears. And the gears, as you can see, are 2680, 1800, 1290, 1000, 775 and 500, and then I've reduced the final drive after that down to 4.2. It's a very long range gearbox and it's perfect for mid-range power. So that's it overall for the build. Now of course let's take it out to see what it can do. Now as I said, this particular model has very similar specs to the premium model. It's not quite as strong in terms of performance and spec, but you wouldn't really expect it to be, given that it is of course a non-premium. And it's a shame that the non-premiums are kind of considered to be not as good, because although they're not as good, they're really not that far off the premium model. They're certainly still worth a look, and oftentimes it can actually be an advantage for Skyline enthusiasts, in top speed racing at least, to actually use a non-premium version. And the reason why I would say that is because people don't think they're as good as they actually are. Now as you can see, even without the use of NOS, it gets up around 260 in no time, which for an import is pretty good. Compared to, of course, something like a Supra or a GTO or a 300ZX, it is going to fall behind. But compared to something like an RX-7, pretty much anything below those models, an NSX, an RX-8, various others, the older Supra for instance, it's going to give those a great run for their money and oftentimes beat them. The Skyline isn't quite as strong top end as the GT-R, of course. It's actually a lot slower, but overall, for the spec that it's given to work with, and for a Skyline overall, which isn't really the most aerodynamic of vehicles, it does pretty well. Now the top speed with this particular setup is around 267, 268 under its own power, so as I said, a little bit behind the premium model, but not much. The acceleration is very good, and as you can see, due to the fact that it's a mid-range turbo and a mid-range compatible gear set, you're relatively low as far as revs. You're sitting at below 8,000, which is nowhere near what you'd have, of course, being on the red line at around 10,000. So you've got a huge amount of draft potential. You can easily get this car up around 300 in draft. You can get it around 285, 290 with NOS, so the performance is very strong, a lot stronger than many people would assume, and you can definitely shock people in public lobbies. And not necessarily just for top speed, this actually does make a very good drag car as well. So, if you do decide to use this build for the non-premium Skyline, and it does work for pretty much all of the non-premium versions, including the pace cars if you're into those, then obviously I hope you find it fun, and it's definitely a lot more competitive than people give it credit for. And if you'd like to keep up with other builds like this on the channel as soon as they're released, be sure to hit subscribe down below for that. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.